There's this whole theme in the Bible, and it's choosing humility over pride. And this is so hard for we as humans. And last time we talked about loving the hateful, which was equally hard. So we're moving on to choosing humility over pride, and we have issues with this directive found in the Word because being humble might be perhaps seen as being unnoticed, unseen, and that doesn't feel good one bit. So maybe we need to look at what humility really is. There are so many examples of pride in the Bible. Pride kept the Pharaoh saying no each time he was commanded to let the people go. The children of Israel stubbornly refused to humble themselves in the wilderness to obey the Father's commands and kept going around in circles. And nations were led by prideful leaders into war and chaos, and towers tumbled. To be humble is to show a low estimate of one's own importance. It doesn't mean to put oneself down, but rather not to lift oneself up. And yet we live in a society of accolades and awards that our children are told to achieve from the time they start preschool. And while there's nothing wrong with accolades and awards, there is something wrong with our standard of measure being placed on those awards for others to see. That's the crux of the problem. Let's look at Numbers 12. In verse 3, we're told that Moses was a very humble man, more humble than any other man on earth. And isn't that interesting that the man who led the most famous exodus of all time, what a prideful thing that could have become, was most likely chosen to lead that exodus because of his humility. And do you remember that Moses had a speech impediment? Could that have been part of his humility, realizing that he needed help from the get-go? Back to Numbers 12, Miriam and Aaron, Moses' siblings, began to question and grumble against their brother. They were tired of God speaking only to Moses and realized that they deserved to be spoken to as well. So God calls the three siblings together and tells them about the character of Moses. He says he's faithful in all my house, and he sees the form of the Lord. And he warns the other two about speaking against their brother. And in verse 9, it says the Lord's anger burned at Miriam and Aaron. So perhaps that's the definition of being humble, to be faithful to serve and obey God, and to be careful to represent who God is because we've been with him and we know him and we've seen him. Those who are truly serving God with humility do so without fanfare, and they do so because they've seen and know the God who loves, and they want to represent him well. Perhaps this is why God is so against being prideful. Pride people do not seek God, but rather seek how much more they can be seen. In Psalm 10:5, it says there's no room in their thoughts for God, just pride. Proverbs 11:2 says pride comes with disgrace, but wisdom comes with humility. And so Proverbs 24 says pride brings a person low, but the low in spirit gain honor. There's a difference between being proud of our kids and being one who is prideful. There's nothing wrong with being proud of a good day's work. But when pride is our identity and that on which we stand to say, look at me, and when that pride is a catalyst for putting ourselves up and others down, that's when the fall takes place. I love James 1, where we are told to consider it joy when we, quote, fall into various trials and tribulations. Remember those 4 T's? And in verse 9, it says, believers in humble circumstances should take pride in their high position, and the rich should take pride in their humiliation. And in verse 21, we're to humbly accept the word planted in us, which can save us. Save us from what? Prideful humiliation. The reason God hates pride so much is that pride precedes haughty actions and words, which render our religion worthless. Humility, on the other hand, enables those that wear it to look to God for worth and value, and this results in looking after others in their distress and keeping ourselves unspotted from worldly ways like hatred and scorn. I've been humbled a few times in my life, and it wasn't pleasant, and I still have many more areas where I have pride. It wasn't pleasant to fall into trouble, but it was necessary to prune prideful branches that were unsightly and bringing attention to me instead of him. Humility over pride. It's like exchanging a tattered coat full of holes and loose threads in the middle of a snowstorm for a warm jacket full of down with a hood that covers us from head to toe so that we're snuggled and warm no matter how low the temps begin to drop.